The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as Captain Sienna Vale stood before the Galactic Tribunal. She'd traveled 3 months to reach the Omega Sphere, a construct so ancient it was whispered about with reverence. But Sienna was tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying the hopes of billions. Grand Arbiter Nexith's voice echoed in her mind. You stand accused of the gravest crime. Your species has weaponized dark matter technology. Sienna's heart hammered. Honored arbiters, humanity's research was defensive. We've been confined, attacked, seen as easy prey. We only sought to protect ourselves. You dare claim defense? Chimed Arbitress Quillen. You're building weapons that could unmake reality itself. The Council has reached its verdict, Nexith announced. Humanity is deemed an existential threat. We invoke the right of sterilization. Your species will be reduced to pre-space flight capabilities and confined to your birth world. Sienna's world shattered. Sterilization. The end of everything. Our enforcement fleets are moving now, an arbiter added. In 72 hours, it will be done. Sienna's ship, the Meridian Hope, drifted through the void like a dying ember, its light a final fleeting spark against the infinite black. The Council S-escort vessels were sharks circling their prey-massive dreadnoughts that could vaporize her small frigate with a single, contemptuous shot. She sat in her command chair, the weight of a civilization on her shoulders, staring at the view screen without really seeing the cold stars beyond. In 72 hours, humanity's short, bright history would be snuffed out. The tribunal had passed its sentence, extinction. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Drake Sokolov, a young man who still believed in happy endings, turned from his console, his voice tight. Captain, we're receiving a coded transmission. It's using old military encryption, something from before the Council's restrictions were put in place. Sienna's brow furrowed, a flicker of curiosity in her otherwise numb expression. Put it through. The main view screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was a woman, perhaps in her 60s, her silver hair pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense bun. Her eyes were chips of ice that had seen too much winter. She wore a uniform that Sienna recognized only from dusty history books, the old Earth Defense Force, defunct for nearly 50 years. Captain Vale, the woman said, her voice a low, steady rumble of authority. My name is Admiral Catherine Frost. You don't know me, but I know you. I know what just happened at that sham of a tribunal. I know what the Council intends to do to our species, and I am here to tell you that we are not going to let that happen. Sienna leaned forward, her fatigue replaced by a jolt of adrenaline. Who are you? How did you get this frequency? Admiral Frost's expression remained unyielding. I am the commander of the Black Fleet, she said simply. The name hung in the air, heavy with myth and rumor. Sienna felt a prickle of disbelief. The Black Fleet is a myth, a ghost story told to scare recruits and keep politicians in line. Frost allowed a small, cold smile to touch her lips. We've worked very hard to cultivate that myth. The few ships the Council discovered were decoys, test vessels we allowed them to find. The real fleet is something else entirely, something they cannot detect, cannot predict, and cannot stop. Sienna shook her head, the idea too vast, too impossible. What are you talking about? We have spent 40 years building in the shadows, Frost explained, her voice gaining intensity. While the Council restricted our visible military to a pathetic 200 ships, we constructed 3,000 vessels that exist outside of normal space. We have weaponized dark matter, not as crude bombs, but as a fundamental force of nature. We can appear anywhere, strike from nowhere, and vanish before their sensors even register a change in temperature. The sheer audacity of it left Sienna breathless. This is insane. You're talking about going to war with the entire Galactic Council. They have millions of ships, weapons that can crack planets, technology we can't even comprehend. They have grown complacent, Frost countered, her voice sharp as broken glass. "They've ruled unchallenged for so long, they've forgotten what it means to truly fight. They see us as children, primitives who stumbled into space by accident. They have no idea what we are capable of when pushed to the very edge of extinction." Just then, Drake's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions all around us. Something is coming out of dark space." The view screen switched to the starfield around them. And then, one by one, ships began to appear. They didn't emerge from hyperspace with a flash of light. They materialized from nothing, like tears being ripped in the fabric of reality itself. They were sleek, angular vessels of midnight black, their hulls covered in strange, shifting patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Hundreds of them, then thousands, filling the void around the Meridian Hope, a silent, menacing forest of warships. The Council escort vessels reacted instantly, their shields flaring to life, weapon ports glowing with deadly energy. Angry commanders shouted over all frequencies, demanding identification, threatening to fire. But Admiral Frost's image remained calm on the screen. "Captain Vale, you have a choice to make. You can stay here and watch as the Council systematically destroys everything humanity has ever built. Or you can join us. Help us show the galaxy that Earth's children will not go quietly into extinction." Sienna looked at the impossible fleet surrounding her ship. She thought about the billions of people back home on Earth and the colonies, going about their lives, utterly unaware that their civilization was just hours away from annihilation. She thought about the arrogant Council, so certain of their righteousness, so convinced that humanity was a blight that needed to be erased. "If we do this," she said slowly, the words heavy with the fate of generations, "there is no going back. We will be declaring war on the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Billions will die. Billions will die anyway," Frost said, her voice unwavering. "The difference is whether we die on our knees or standing tall, whether we let them erase us from history or make them remember the name of Earth forever." As if on cue, the escort dreadnoughts opened fire. Blinding beams of coherent energy lanced through space, aimed directly at the Black Fleet. But the dark matter ships didn't move, didn't even seem to react. The weapons' fire passed straight through them, as if they existed on a different plane of reality entirely. Then, the Black Fleet returned fire. It wasn't lasers or missiles. It was something else, something terrifying. Waves of pure distortion rippled through space, bending reality itself, tearing the Council dreadnoughts apart at a molecular level. The massive warships disintegrated, their atoms unspooling into the void. In less than 10 seconds, 3 of the most powerful ships in the sector were reduced to expanding clouds of incandescent debris. Drake's voice was a choked whisper. "Captain, they're hailing us again." "The Admiral wants your answer." Sienna closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered her father, a veteran of humanity's early colonial wars. He'd told her once that the hardest choices in life weren't between right and wrong, but between 2 terrible options, where you had to choose which future you could bear to live with. She opened her eyes, the decision made, a shard of ice forming in her own heart. She looked at Admiral Frost. "Tell me the plan." A genuine predatory smile widened on Frost's face. "We are going to hit them where they least expect it. The Omega Sphere, the Tribunal Station itself. It's the symbol of their power, their supposed invincibility. We're going to show the Council that their laws, their power, their entire system of control is built on nothing but an illusion." Her voice dropped, filled with a cold, righteous fury. "We are going to make them fear us." The view screen changed, now displaying tactical readouts, fleet positions, and attack vectors. Sienna saw the sheer, magnificent insanity of what Frost was proposing. A direct assault on the most heavily defended location in known space, against forces that had maintained a galactic peace for millennia through overwhelming force. When? Sienna asked, her voice steady. Now, Frost replied without hesitation, before their main fleets can mobilize, before they can prepare. We strike fast, we strike hard, and we make them understand, once and for all, that humanity will never accept extinction without a fight. Sienna swiveled her command chair to face her crew. They were all looking at her, their faces pale but their eyes shining. She saw fear, yes, but beneath it, she saw a burning determination. They were ready to follow her into hell itself, if that's what she asked of them. She drew a deep breath and activated the ship-wide cones. Her voice, clear and strong, rang through every corridor of the Meridian Hope. All hands, battle stations. We are going to war. The journey to the Omega Sphere was a 6-hour descent into dark space, a strange realm between dimensions where the normal laws of physics simply didn't apply. I spent that time learning about the Black Fleet's true capabilities, and what I discovered left me both awed and terrified. These ships weren't just vessels. They were extensions of their pilots, connected through neural interfaces that merged human consciousness with dark matter itself. They could phase between realities, exist in multiple places at once, and even manipulate the fundamental forces holding the universe together. Each ship was powered by a controlled dark matter reaction that made our most advanced fusion reactors look like candles compared to stars. But this incredible power came at a terrible cost. The pilots aged rapidly, their bodies breaking down under the immense strain of existing partially outside of normal spacetime. Most survived only 5 years of active service. I realized then that the Black Fleet wasn't just a military force. It was a sacrifice. Thousands of men and women giving their lives so that the rest of humanity might have a chance to survive. Admiral Frost's flagship, the Prometheus Unchained, led the armada. I stood on its bridge, watching as 3,000 ghost ships prepared for the most audacious attack in human history. A tactical officer's voice cut through the silence. Target in range. Council defense grid is active. I'm reading 4,000 Guardian platforms, 800 capital ships, and the Sphere's own defensive systems. He paused. They have enough firepower to sterilize 100 worlds. Frost stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind her back. She looked like a statue carved from stone, unmovable, eternal. Begin the attack, she commanded. Instantly, the Black Fleet split into 3 prongs, each targeting a different section of the defense grid. They didn't charge in like traditional warships. Instead, they phased in and out of reality, appearing behind enemy lines, striking from impossible angles, and vanishing before any return fire could lock on. The Council's forces were formidable, their weapons devastatingly powerful. But they were fighting an enemy that didn't play by the rules they understood. Every time they concentrated their fire on one section of our fleet, those ships simply ceased to exist in that location, only to reappear somewhere else entirely. I watched, mesmerized, as a Council dreadnought, 3 kilometers of armor and weapons, was torn apart by dark matter lances that ripped open holes in spacetime itself. I saw massive Guardian platforms exploding like fireworks as our ships phased directly inside of them, destroying them from within. The battle wasn't elegant or heroic. It was brutal, efficient, and utterly ruthless. But the Council was adapting. Their commanders, veterans of 1,000 campaigns, began to predict the phase patterns. They started firing not where our ships were, but where they were about to be. The Black Fleet's losses began to mount. First dozens, then hundreds of our ships flickered out of existence as concentrated fire overwhelmed their phase shields. A voice called out across the bridge, "Admiral, we've lost contact with battle groups 7 and 12. Estimated casualties at 1,800 vessels." Frost didn't flinch. "Continue the assault. All ships, focus fire on the sphere itself. Ignore the defense fleet." The Black Fleet changed tactics, burning through space toward the colossal Omega Sphere. The ancient construct's own defenses activated, lashing out with energy beams that could vaporize entire planets. The space around the sphere became a storm of fire and death. I felt the Prometheus Unchained shudder violently as it took a glancing hit. Alarms blared across the bridge. A cold certainty washed over me. We were going to die here. Even if we succeeded, even if we destroyed the sphere, none of us were getting home. "All ships," Frost commanded, her voice ringing with finality. "Final attack formation. Prepare dark matter convergence." I understood immediately what that meant. Every remaining ship in the fleet would channel their dark matter reactors into a single focused point, creating a concentrated burst of energy that existed outside normal physics. It would be like detonating a bomb in the space between dimensions. The resulting blast would tear apart anything nearby, including the very ships generating it. I turned to the Admiral and said quietly, "The crew deserves to know. This is a one-way mission." Frost turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than steel in her eyes. It wasn't determination or rage, but a profound, deep sadness. "They knew, Captain Vale," she said. "Every single person on these ships volunteered understanding the cost. We are not fighting for ourselves anymore. We are fighting so that children on Earth will grow up free. So that humanity's story doesn't end here, with us being erased by those who fear what we might become." The Black Fleet converged on the Omega Sphere, forming a shell around the massive construct. On the main view screen, I could see the tribunal chamber where I had stood just hours ago. I wondered if the 7 arbiters were still inside, if they finally understood that they had misjudged humanity catastrophically. "All ships report ready," the tactical officer announced. Admiral Frost raised her hand. "For Earth, for our future." Her voice was steady. "Fire." 3,000 dark matter reactors overloaded simultaneously, channeling their cataclysmic energy into a single point in non-space. Reality itself screamed, the fabric of existence tearing like paper. The Omega Sphere, that monument to ancient civilizations, that symbol of the Council's eternal power, began to come apart. I watched as geometric patterns of pure energy spread across its surface like cracks in glass. The 12 suns that powered it flared, and then died, one by one. The crystallized nebula matter that formed its shell shattered into a billion shimmering fragments. And at the center, where the tribunal chamber had been, there was nothing but a growing void, a hole in space-time that consumed everything it touched. The Council's defense fleet was in chaos, ships fleeing in every direction as their command structure collapsed. The Guardian platforms went dark. And still, the Black Fleet pressed forward, sacrificing themselves ship by ship to feed the growing catastrophe at the heart of Council space. I felt the Prometheus Unchained begin to break apart. The hull was fracturing, atmosphere venting into the void. Around me, crew members were dying at their posts, their bodies unable to withstand the impossible forces tearing through the ship. But Admiral Frost stood unmoved, her gaze fixed on the destruction of the Omega Sphere. "We did it," she said softly, a whisper against the roaring alarms. "Let the galaxy remember this day. Let them remember that humanity will not be caged, will not be controlled, and will not go quietly into the dark." The view screen went white as the dark matter convergence reached critical mass. I had time for one final thought, a desperate hope that somewhere, somehow, this incredible sacrifice would mean something. That children I would never meet would one day look up at the stars and know, truly know, that they were free to dream. 3 months. 3 months since the Battle of the Omega Sphere, and Captain Sienna Vale still felt like she was living in a dream. Standing on the observation deck of the new Earth Defense Station, she gazed at the stars. She should have been dead. Every single one of them should have been. But Admiral Frost, at the very last second, she'd activated a failsafe. A dark matter pulse that ripped the surviving ships out of the inferno and flung them back into normal space, scattered across the galaxy like cosmic dust. Out of 3,000 ships that had gone to face the Council's ultimate weapon, only 217 limped home. Sienna's vessel was one of them, though how, she still couldn't explain. She'd woken up in a med bay, her body whole, but her mind fractured with impossible memories of being everywhere at once. The galaxy she woke up to was a different place. The destruction of the Omega Sphere and the deaths of the 7 Arbiters had shattered the Galactic Council. Some species screamed for humanity's extermination, but others saw the footage. They saw human ships, outgunned and outnumbered, tearing through their most formidable defenses. And suddenly, those species were very, very interested in talking. Earth's government, caught between terror and a wild, breathtaking exhilaration, had recalled all its forces, bracing for the final, annihilating blow. But it never came. Instead, ambassadors arrived, not with demands of surrender, but with invitations to negotiate. Captain Vale, a voice pulled her from her thoughts. Sienna turned to see Ambassador Hassan Okonkwo, one of Earth's top diplomats. He was a tall man, his hair graying at the temples, but his eyes held a deep kindness. "I thought you might want to hear the news directly." Sienna's heart began to pound against her ribs. "What have they decided?" Okonkwo smiled, a genuine relieved smile that reached his eyes. "The Council Remnant has agreed to our terms, Captain. Full membership, no restrictions. Access to all trade routes and protected zones. The right to maintain our fleet at whatever strength we deem necessary. They're even offering technological exchanges, joint research programs." Tears pricked at Sienna's eyes. She fought to keep her voice steady. "And the sterilization order?" "Rescinded." "Completely," Okonkwo confirmed. "They're calling it a misunderstanding, though we all know the truth. They pushed us too far, and we showed them what humans do when we're cornered. Now they want us as allies, not enemies." Sienna looked back out at the endless sea of stars, her mind filled with the faces of those who had died to buy this moment. Admiral Frost, found on the bridge of the Prometheus Unchained, still at her post, even in death. The thousands of pilots who flew into certain oblivion, their only goal to buy a few more seconds for the others. The billions on Earth who lived for weeks under a shadow of annihilation, not knowing if each sunrise would be their last. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Okonkwo came to stand beside her, his gaze joining hers. "Now we build, we explore. We prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through what we create, what we discover, what we contribute. The Council learned we can't be intimidated. Now we have to show them we can be trusted." A cold knot formed in Sienna's stomach. "And if they try this again? If they decide we're still too dangerous?" Okonkwo's voice dropped, quiet but firm. "Then we remind them of the Omega Sphere. We remind them that Earth's children do not break easily. But I don't think it will come to that. Fear is a powerful teacher, and the galaxy just learned a very harsh lesson about underestimating humanity." Sienna's mind drifted back to her last conversation with Admiral Frost, to the impossible choice she had laid out. Accept extinction with dignity, or fight with every last breath. The cost had been staggering, unimaginable. But the alternative was nothingness. The Admiral had been right. "I'm being reassigned," Sienna said, finding a new strength in her voice. "They want me to command one of the new exploration vessels. The Voyager Initiative." Okonkwo nodded, his expression full of approval. "Perfect. Show them what humanity does best, Captain. Not destroying, but discovering. Not conquering, but connecting." Just then, a young ensign approached, saluting crisply. "Captain Vale, your transport is ready. The Voyager awaits." Sienna returned the salute, her eyes drawn back to the viewport one last time. Out there in that vast, silent darkness were worlds no human had ever seen. Civilizations with their own stories, their own struggles, their own dreams. And now, finally, humanity was free to meet them as equals. She thought of the children on Earth, playing in parks, going to school, blissfully unaware of how close the world came to vanishing forever. They would grow up in a different universe now, a universe where the name human carried weight, where Earth was a power to be respected, not a problem to be erased. That future was bought with blood and unimaginable sacrifice. It was up to her generation, to her, to make sure it meant something. "Captain," the ensign prompted gently. Sienna smiled, a real smile this time, and walked toward the exit. Behind her, Earth hung in space like a breathtaking blue jewel. It looked so small, so fragile from this distance. But she knew now that size didn't matter. What mattered was will, courage, and the unbreakable refusal to let any force in the universe tell humanity where it could and could not go. The doors hissed shut behind her as she strode toward her future. The battle was over, but the story of humanity among the stars was just beginning. They had proven they could survive. Now it was time to prove they could thrive. And somewhere, in whatever quiet corner the Cosmos soldiers go to when their watch is over, Admiral Catherine Frost was watching, and she was satisfied. Her sacrifice had not been in vain. She had given humanity its freedom, and they would honor that gift by becoming something worthy of the stars. The galaxy would forever remember the day the Omega Sphere fell. But more importantly, it would remember what came after.